For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning. Yes, so a busy weekend for Joe Biden. He signed off on the debt ceiling thing. OPEC as well, which I'll come on to. So generally speaking, a relatively positive day for Asia-Pacific stocks. Hong Kong up about 0.5%. China bucking the trend slightly down about 0.5%. Nikkei rising further. That's basically the picture. Is the big question really which investors are asking themselves is once again something I've been touching on all last week, really. What is happening to the China recovery? Is it headed for stagnation, for example? Well, apparently not. I think my suspicions are that the central bank will be more accommodative to the China economy, and that appears to be no particular credit to me, but it happens to be echoed by a number of leading economists over the weekend who are saying the same kind of thing, that there will be an accommodation towards the economy from the Chinese authorities if they feel as though the growth is not necessarily happening there. Let's turn our attention then to OPEC, and the real surprise, not so much OPEC Plus, which didn't change, it was more Saudi actually saying they're going to cut by $1 million barrels of oil a day, and that's from July. Clearly, they feel as though the oil price has slipped down too far, and this is adding OPEC plus the other nations involved on the sort of fringes of OPEC itself, the OPEC founder members, not saying a great deal, but the feeling amongst economists is we could be looking now at $100 a barrel by the end of the year. That, if you remember, was a sort of Goldman Sachs target, which I mentioned earlier this month. But there's still disappointing economic growth from the EU, from the United States, currently, and also China, which is keeping the oil price relatively down. But the two main benchmarks are up about 2% as a result of what OPEC and the Saudis actually said. As far as the US is concerned, a broadly successful week last week, ending with those bumper employment figures. Joe Biden, as I say, signing off the debt ceiling plan. So that more or less has done it. That's avoided, and of course, just until next year, but avoided a lot. I still worry slightly about the cut in federal spending, which may have a deleterious effect on the US economy, but we'll wait to see about that. The investors are sort of looking relatively positively as to what's been going on in the United States. And this week, there's not that much corporate news, but we will get an idea of consumer spending and also food pricing, which is quite important as far as the United States is concerned. The IMF chief, she's Kristalina Georgieva, and we talked about her in the past, has said that she feels as though the economy in the US is strong enough, lending has not fallen enough, and therefore the Fed needs to interest rates slightly more. Let's turn our attention to Elon Musk. He's raided NBC Universal again, this time for somebody called Joe Bannerock, who is going to be the person in charge of Twitter's business model, such as it is. Musk himself is withdrawing. I mean, he'll still be nominally in charge, and he's withdrawing to concentrate on Tesla and SpaceX and so on. But it's quite important that and he joins Linda Yaccarino, who came on board from NBC as chief executive last week. In the UK, now, Rishi Sunak's going to the United States this week. He's going to meet Joe Biden. He's going to lobby Joe Biden on trying to make the UK the sort of hub of AI regulation, these sort of so-called guardrails that are being brought in. He wants the UK to be a sort of parallel, not in functional terms, but in the sort of thought about it, like the International Atomic Energy Authority or CERN, indeed, which both relate to regulation on advancing technologies. And he feels the UK needs to be ahead of the game, or wants to create that. Whether Joe Biden agrees or sort, we don't know. We'll probably find out this week. The Bank of England wants to broaden its protection to investors after the SVB collapse. Now, the point about that was, I know that the UK part of it was bought for £1 and all the rest of it. But there were certain tech investors who borrowed through it who weren't paid for about a month, and they feel as though they should have been like their US counterparts, repaid straight away as a result of the rescue mission that went out for SVB. And it'll also mean, and again, I've talked about this before, they want to raise the level of protection from 85,000 to more like £200,000 to mirror what happens in the United States. And also, again, I've talked in the past about the troubles of the CBI, the bosses sort of lobbying group, which has been going for many, many years. As you know, there were serious misconduct allegations about that. A new body is arising as we speak now, a new business forum. So far, no name for it, but being joined by BP and Heathrow and Drax, which is the big national power generator, and also the hotels group IHE. Again, there will be those who would like the CBI to survive, and they're making their names felt over the next day. Tomorrow there's a crucial vote as far as the CBI is concerned. We've talked about oil. I just want to add gold to the sort of commodities list. It's tumbled on the back of those US jobs figures, as you'd expect. This isn't to say that there's more risk ahead, and isn't to say that gold investors are onto necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just that those jobs figures actually made the price tumble, as you'd expect. That's the global view this morning.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Just to go to the oil price, Saudi Arabia choosing to cut down output or production by up to 1 million barrels per day to show up oil prices. The question I have is, what impact would it be for other oil producers? Because obviously, as the largest exporter of oil, they are in that position to make that decision. But in terms of other oil producers, especially countries who depend on oil production to sustain their economies, what's the impact for them?
Well, I'm guessing, because I'm not an expert as far as the oil industry is concerned, but what I'm guessing is that what the Saudi thing has already happened has increased the oil price by 2%. There's no saying that it won't rise further as a result of this, and thus I can sort of understand why the other OPEC plus people weren't saying an enormous amount, because they'll just ride that rise in price, I would imagine. Although, I mean, of course, as you quite rightly say, they do wish to produce more oil, but it depends on the price, and it looks like the price at the moment is rising as a result of that Saudi action.
Well, I mean, the African countries, Nigeria and Angola, were not very enthusiastic about the unilateral decision that was taken by Saudi Arabia. But you could then say that, some of these countries never even met their, quotas due to underinvestment and a number of other factors. But obviously, Saudi Arabia, this is the second time this year that Saudi Arabia will be taking a unilateral decision. It probably exercises, you may agree, a veto power over OPEC+. But I wanted to ask you about mortgage rates in the UK. Over the weekend, Santander, TSB just decided to take a decision that increased mortgage rates from about 5.54 to 5.64%. And we're told that the Coventry Society tomorrow may also take the same decision and increase its rates on Tuesday. Do you have any comment on this in terms of how this is likely to affect, the middle class, cost of living?
Well, I feel as though I think that because what's happening is that the reason that this week's in focus, and the reason that these building societies and banks are doing this, is because a lot of people are coming off their fixed rate mortgages and now are hunting around for new ones. And this has happened at a time of rising interest rates. You've got on the one hand the Bank of England governor saying that interest rates will rise as high as possible to control inflation. So the banks and the building societies who lend out mortgages have to be cognizant of that. They've also withdrawn some of their products from the market as well. So you've got more people searching for fewer mortgages, and thus the price will rise as a result of market forces and also interest rate rises. So it's going to be another problem for people who have mortgages, another problem for the cost of living. However, what tends to happen in these circumstances is that somebody somewhere along the line says, okay, enough is enough. We need to attract more people into the market and prices will come down. But again, that's a market reaction. I suspect that probably won't happen for a couple of months.
Well, Michael, just before we go, President Recep Erdogan of Turkey has just appointed the former Minister of Finance, former Deputy Prime Minister, is a Minister of Treasury and Finance. And there's some optimism that because he's a market-friendly person, that we're likely to see a shift in terms of the economic direction of Turkey. Is that optimism well placed?
It's not worthless. It's a useful addition to the equation, I would imagine. It's not something that I could comment on particularly because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But at the moment, I mean, if you generally speaking, most democracies and most central banks are in a tightening mode, and I suspect that will probably continue.
Well, thank you.
We'll take a short break now. Thank you very much, Michael. See you again tomorrow morning. Now, when we return, we'll have Rotu Sodiri to give us updates on Africa business activities. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Saudi Arabia says it will cut oil output by 1 million barrels per day until the end of next year. The measure follows a meeting of the Alliance of the world's biggest oil-producing nations in Vienna. OPEC Plus already has in place a cut of 2 million barrels per day, agreed last year, amounting to 2% of global demand. The group is facing a slump in oil prices and a looming glut in supply. In April, OPEC Plus agreed to a surprise cut of 1.16 million barrels per day. The move pushed oil prices as high as $87 per barrel. But his post-cut gains didn't last due to concerns over global economic growth. Recently, prices have been loitering below $75 per barrel.
As we have done in April, whereby the countries that had agreed to do the voluntary cuts have extended that voluntary cuts to end of 24. And I would have to call it the Saudi lollipop, which is 1 million barrel of reduction for the start that starts at the 1st of July. And that million is also extendable. We, as a cluster of 23 countries, we will do whatever it is necessary to bring stability to this market. What is necessary, not whatever.
During this year, the voluntary cut remained. During 2024, we agreed on the new levels. And for 2025, we even agreed on the ground. We agreed on, we set the ground for new methodology that will bring more visibility and certainty as to how do we assign those levels of cut for the different countries.
We, as the United Arab Emirates, have joined the voluntary cut for the year 2024.
Meanwhile, in an exclusive interview with Arise News, Gabriel Tanemo Aduda, head of delegation of Nigeria OPEC, Governor and Ministry of Petroleum Permanent Secretary, stated that Nigeria is advancing its course in the regulated market and the government of Nigeria is doing everything possible to alleviate the pains of the citizens after the subsidy removal.
You understand that OPEC is all about ensuring market stability and then trying to see that productions are such that the market does not get volatile or the market does not get oversaturated, because oil production is all about numbers. And how we are able to run these numbers across countries helps us to maintain market visibility, market stability, and then consistency of flow across board. So what we've been able to achieve at this 189 meeting is basically looking at, 186th meeting is looking at our numbers The quotas as have been provided by OPEC, especially for 2023, we've been able to look at countries that have been able to meet their production quotas and those that are struggling to meet up production quotas. And then, as you know, Nigeria has been struggling, especially because of the security challenges in the Niger Delta, which has adversely impacted heavily on our ability to meet up our quota, but which in the past months we have seen quite, some very good response from our security teams, and then we've seen productions rising. So basically, the whole idea of cutting off here and adding up there, and it's just to ensure that the market remains stable, to avoid any forms of either volatilities or any forms that could actually cause the market to dip. We had that a few years ago, 2021 precisely, and I think the whole idea of this meeting and going forward to also put forward projections that are reasonable to ensure that we do not see that dip again. The beauty of OPEC is that it is a whole organization, and that actually has this mechanism so we could have our say to say, well, we do not agree with either the figures that have come or we agree with the figures, but more so, we will also have our own independent assessments back home. So whichever way you look at it, the fact that we have the OPEC has selected 3 different entities, the IHS, Rystad, and McKinsey, to do that does not preclude us back home from having our own assessors to ensure that whatever figures they're coming up with is actually either exactly accurate at least or near accurate. So I think to a large extent, we are not bothered about that. Rather, I think we welcome the transparency that this will bring to the system, because it is not only us, it means every OPEC member country will be assessed, and it is on these assessments that we will now be able to see, quotas will be built on. So I think that further helps the market in itself and also helps predictability. Well, first and foremost, I think we need to come to terms with one thing back home, and that is the fact that the subsidy removal has come to stay. It was not sustainable, and this is something that has been in the pipeline for too long, and we're happy that finally we've been able to hit the nail on the head. And it's a very, very, very bold move by His Excellency, Mr. President, by the way, and one that should be applauded. Now, is it coming with its challenges? Absolutely. There is no way subsidy has been removed that didn't lead to one form of challenge or the other, especially social challenges. In some cases, there are fears of heightened poverty, there are fears of sufferings of especially the lower rungs in the ladder of society and what have you. But then I think government is also working, because we're not unaware of all that's going on, to ensure that palliatives are in place that will reduce the impact upon Nigerians, as it were. And then there's quite a number of baskets have been prepared. As you know, the negotiations are still on with Labour. A number of options have been put on the table, and we believe that Labour has been very reasonable, and so we're looking at how, at the end of the day, we'll be able to choose from these baskets and agree on which to implement, such that we'll be able to alleviate the impact on the Nigerians. So yes, these social factors are there. We're also considering them, and we know that the moment subsidy is removed, it will hit. And it's already hitting. Of course, you can already feel the impact. Okay, but government also is up on its toes and ensuring that these palliatives are in place to kind of reduce the suffering on Nigerians.
Moving on, Africa's private sector is in focus at the Africa CEO Forum, which begins today in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. Arise business correspondent Rotus Odiri is live in Abidjan to speak to us. Good morning, Rotus. How's it going?
Good morning, Doctor. We've missed you. Good to have you back in the studio.
You.
Good morning to Ayo and all our viewers. It's going well. It's going well.
Well, quickly, what kind of opening ceremony should we expect today at the Africa CEO Forum?
High level, Doctor. You can see the security, metal detectors behind me. President Hassan Ouattara is here. He's going to be part of the opening ceremony. You had your exclusive on the morning show not too long ago with Ben Amir Yamid, who is the CEO of Jeune Afrique Media Group that is putting this together, that founded this gathering of the largest private sector gathering in Africa for this event. Also, Makta Diop, the managing director of the International Finance Corporation that is a partner with Jeune Afrique Media. he's going to be part of that opening ceremony. So it's going to be pretty heavy.
All right, talking about being pretty heavy and high level, which high level deliberations will take place today?
Yeah, there are going to be a lot. They're going to be talking about how the private sector can be an engine for growth across the African continent. So I think Larry Madowo of CNN is going to be anchoring a discussion on economic growth. There's going to be top-level CEOs talking about debt, talking about foreign exchange volatility, talking about talents, the proper talents to foster growth. And in fact, if our camera, I don't know if we can do this, if we can pan over, here's my session. I'm actually proud to be moderating a session today as we I know that people are working, but that's my session. How can Africa 10x the number of billion-dollar companies? So I'll be moderating a panel later on this afternoon to talk about, because Africa only has about 345 companies on the continent that have $1 billion in revenue. Europe has over 2,700, America has over 1,500, Asia has about 3,000, over 3,300. So the session I'll be moderating will be on that with a number of executives on how we can improve that revenues, or how companies in Africa can get their revenues to at least $1 billion or more.
Well, foreign exchange repatriation, as you pointed out, is likely to be a topic today. What is the latest news from the International Air Transport Association, which has been expressing concern about connectivity?
Yeah, they put out a press release yesterday, and hopefully we'll put up some figures. They are saying that the amount of blocked funds that are unable to be repatriated has risen by 47% to $2.2 billion. So that is a lot of money. Basically, 47%, that's almost 50% growth in the amount of blocked funds that airlines are unable to repatriate out of the various countries in which they do business. And it gets worse. They said that 68% of that 2.2 billion is being held by the top 5 countries where those funds are blocked. And unfortunately, Nigeria leads the way. The amount of blocked funds in Nigeria, according to IATA, is $821 million. If we look at the top 5, I think Bangladesh is in second place at about 241 billion. You've got Pakistan, you've got Algeria, I think is in third place, 196 million. And then you've got, Lebanon. Lebanon is also in that top 5 as well. Ethiopia is in 6th place. So here's the funny thing, or not really funny thing, the terrifying thing. If you add up the amount of money that Bangladesh, Lebanon, Algeria, and the rest I think Pakistan as well, Nigeria's amount that Nigeria owes eclipses all the other 4 in the top 5. So if you add the rest of them, it comes out to about $739 million. Nigeria is about 821. Mr. Willie Walsh, the Director General of IATA, put out a quote saying that it is not helpful for the airlines to not be able to repatriate their money out of these various countries, and that there's a deliberating effect on their operations. He also said that they need to work with governments, or rather governments need to work with the airlines in order to get that money out, because it's impacting their operations and also impacting job growth. And if we tie this to President Tinubu's speech, his inauguration speech, remember he had a specific message for investors where President Tinubu said, we will work to get foreign investors to be able to repatriate their money out there. So, President Tinubu is already working with, talking to the Labour Congress, how to avert a strike on Wednesday, and now you've got this issue with repatriation of funds. So, there's a lot that is being looked at. So that is one of the things that's going to be discussed today. And IATA is just reminding everyone that the amount of money that is blocked in these various countries is still very high. And another thing, what does Nigeria, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Lebanon have in common? Foreign exchange illiquidity, high levels of debts that's not allowing them to channel their revenues to allow FX inflow to get the money. So it's a lot is going to be discussed today, but that was just something that the IATA put out just yesterday, so we had to jump on that and inform our viewers.
Well, thank you, Rotus. I think we should also take time out to enjoy Abidjan. Excellent nightlife, good food, and some nice restaurants.
I will, Doctor. I will. I'll do my best. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rotus.